this is not right. I would say this is my first foray into epoxy pours, but as you just saw, this is take number 2. And we will succeed this time because I have no other option. To help out with this project, TotalBoat sent some of their thick-set clear cast epoxy, which is perfect for this project because it dries crystal clear. Also, VEVO sent me their vacuum chamber. We'll talk about this just a little bit later. Once we mix up the epoxy, stick the cup in the vacuum chamber, and that gets all of the bubbles out. This project's for a local business who had their logo made into Legos, and I already made them have to order a second one because I screwed up the first one. It's just how I do business apparently. Great customer service. Let's move on. You may not believe this after looking at my first attempt at the pour, but I actually did a test pour with one Lego square, and it went really well. So what happened with the first pour? Well, 2 or 3 different things happened. The first was I poured 2 or 3 layers, and that was fine. There were shallow layers. And after the third one, it was really glassy and clear. I was happy with it. It wasn't perfectly flat. There was a little bit of orange peeling if you looked at it in the right angle, but it was plenty good enough for this project. The problem was a bug landed right in the middle of the project, and I thought, I can't leave this here. I'm gonna go ahead and sand it down and then polish it, and then hopefully that will eliminate all of that mess. Once I got into it, the bug was a lot further down than I initially thought, and something weird happened with the resin. The state that you see it in now is me really just messing around because I was able to take a little chip off the top and realize that the resin below that top layer just seemed to be encased by it. It really wasn't attached to it, and it was hardly cured at all. It was still really wet. So I was curious if it was like that all the way down, so I took some really rough sandpaper to it and then a chisel and chipped away some. I think all of that's a result of me letting it sit and cure and then coming back and deciding to try to sand and polish it and then sanding it, maybe not cleaning it off well enough, I don't know, I'm not sure, and then pouring another layer of resin on top of that, and it was cloudy. And maybe it didn't cure well enough. The temperature's kind of fluctuating. We're in wintertime here in the US, so maybe that had something to do with the way it was curing. It's just a huge mess, and I'm glad we're starting over. This logo's bigger than the last one, so I've got to make a new form and a new frame. The form is made out of melamine. That's very non-stick, so the resin won't stick to it. And I actually add a little bit of wax to make it even easier to pop off. And I seal all the seams up with black silicone. The reason I use black is so that I can see it, make sure that I have silicone all along the seams. If you use clear or white, especially on a melamine background like this, it's hard to tell sometimes if you've got it in all of the nooks and crannies. So I let the silicone cure for at least 24 hours, and then I clean the inside of the form the best that I can. And to keep the squares from floating, I add a little bit of hot glue to the back of each one and press them down, and this keeps them in place so I can just focus on the pour. And this worked really well the first time. As I mentioned before, VEVO sent me their vacuum chamber. And if you're looking to get into degassing, whether it's silicone molds or essential oils or resin, this is a really cost-effective but solid setup. The only things I had to do out of the box were to attach the adapter here to the pump, put the oil in the pump, which this one came with oil, and then attach this valve to the glass, which is supposed to be bulletproof. I've already got this locked down. You can see it's a really solid connection. I think this is gonna work great. So if you've been looking for a vacuum chamber, or if you just wanna make your resin pours and your silicone molds a lot better, then I'll put a link down in the description so you can go pick one up. This thick-set clear cast is 3 parts resin to 1 part hardener. If you buy some of TotalBoat's containers here, they make it really easy. We'll just go to the 3-to-1 chart, and then I'll pour to a number with resin, and then we'll fill it up with the hardener to that number on the other side. All right, it's time to make the frame. I'm gonna use this select pine from the home center. This is perfect for us because we're gonna end up painting this. It's blemish free, it'll paint up real nice. Now what I'm gonna do is rip this down to 2-inch strips, and then we're gonna turn those sideways, and that will be the depth of the frame. And then we'll cut a dado into each one, 1/2 inch from the bottom, and that's where the plywood back will slide into. After that first coat dried, I sanded it down with 220 grit sandpaper and then applied a second coat. I'm also attaching the logo to the frame with epoxy, so I want to put a little bit of black silicone along the edges just to make sure it doesn't leak out. I'm going to use epoxy to attach the logo to the frame, to this backer piece. I've painted this piece to seal up the wood so that the epoxy doesn't just soak into this and starve that joint. As for the outer frame itself, I'm going to spray it with a clear water-based polyurethane, and I'm going to use a piece of wood to keep it from getting on this back piece as much as possible, but if it gets some overspray, it's not that big of a deal.